What is up, everyone? Welcome to episode number 21 of the Ohio Sports Radio Show. It is Friday, October 14th. The weekend is here, and we are back with a new episode of the Ohio Sports Radio Show. I'm Jared. He's Ian. Ready to talk some Ohio sports with you guys. So without further ado, Ian, let's go ahead and get into it this week. For those of you who may be new to the show, we usually start each episode off with our best and worst of this past week. So Ian, brother, let's hear your best and worst.
My best of the week, Cleveland Indians, hottest team in baseball right now. Quick work of the Boston Red Sox, sweeping them in the ALDS. If the playoffs ended today, Andrew Miller would without a doubt be the MVP. The guy got a standing O in Cleveland during Game 1 after throwing 40 pitches over 2 innings. Just goes to show you in the postseason, you do not play closer into the ninth. You use whoever you need at whenever you need. Francona has done well with this managing of the bullpen. My worst of the week, Kessler and Whitehurst go down with injuries for the Browns. It never ends with this team. Now, including prior, we've used 5 quarterbacks this season. So just absolutely depressing.
Yeah, it's like I texted you. It seems like it's mathematically more possible that you would finally find one good quarterback that actually works than to have so many different starting quarterbacks, but I digest. So my best and worst, I'm actually going to start with my worst this week. My worst, my Cincinnati Bengals performance on the road at Dallas against a rookie Dak Prescott and rookie running back Ezekiel Elliott. They looked like shit. Terrible. They looked so bad on both sides of the ball. They couldn't stop the Cowboys for nothing. They couldn't protect Andy Dalton. We'll get into it more later, but just a terrible performance by my Bengals. My best of the week is, Ian, you know what? I'm a big NHL guy. The NHL is officially back. Wednesday night was the opening night of the season. Thursday night is chock full of games. I love it. Best time of the year. We got the NFL, NCAA, football, you got NBA starting up, NHL starting up, you got the MLB playoffs. It's the best time of year. And actually, I challenged Mr. Ian Harold to pick his team. He's not a hockey fan. I'm a huge hockey fan, so I'm trying to get him into the sport. I challenged him to pick a team and follow them throughout the season. And Ian, you chose who?
I went with the Minnesota Wild. To be honest with you, I Google searched who should you root for in the NHL.
That's not a bad choice.
It gave me a full rundown of why I would pick a team. And with the article that I read, the Minnesota Wild just can't kind of seem like a better version of the Cleveland Browns. Seems like they always have sellouts. Fans just fall short every year in getting what they expect. And just sounds like a gritty team, so I'm going with the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, now for all of you Ohio sports fans, obviously we're following the Blue Jackets, but I wanted him to reach out of his market. I wanted him to pick a team that he actually could follow. I like the Minnesota Wild. I like that pick, Ian. They got some good players on their team, some good scores. Zach Parise, one of the best scorers in the league, and I like that pick, man. So kudos to you as a new diehard Minnesota Wild fan. I fully expect you to get a custom sweater, maybe a Harold 69 custom Minnesota Wild sweater. So congrats as the newest member of the Minnesota Wild. But let's move on. Typically we start each show, or after best and worst, we segue into a segment called Top 5. Well, this week we're actually going to introduce a new segment. We're not replacing Top 5. We're just introducing a new segment to see how it goes instead of Top 5 this week. This segment is going to be called On the Radar. On the Radar, gosh. So On the Radar is going to be a segment where we pick out a specific player. It can be of any team, of any sport, that is currently on our radar, whether they've had a good performance, they're in the news negatively, something like that, where we can go into it a little bit. It gives us a way to talk about sports outside of the state of Ohio, which we love talking about, but it is always cool to be able to talk about different things. So, Ian, who is on the radar for you this week?
Anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely fucking hate the Chicago Cubs, but my on-the-radar guy is Javier Baez. He single-handedly advanced the Cubs past the Giants in the divisional series, and it was an even year. So, I mean, the Giants getting knocked out of the playoffs of the playoffs in an even year. I had them pegged to win the World Series. For the season, Baez hit 273 with 14 bombs. Pretty mediocre season. This guy's just going to continue to get better. He's ninth selection in 2011 for the Cubs. And, he has all the tools. I think he's going to be a breakout player moving forward. 2017, he's going to be a bigger part of that offense. The Cubs are set with a lot of these young guys, Rizzo, Bryant, Schwarber. You throw Baez in there. I think Baez is going to be an absolute superstar. I hated seeing the Cubs advance past the Giants, but it was primarily because of this guy. Javier Baez is on the radar for me.
Kid's an absolute stud, and low-key has one of the coolest tattoos that he got when he was like 15, by the way. The MLB logo on his neck, right where it is on the jersey. That's a cocky move to get that tattoo.
Very bold.
At 15. The kid's a stud. He's a great fielder. You saw some of the plays he made in the field that were just mesmerizing. He's got a good bat. Like they were really talking this kid up during the broadcast, kept calling him fearless at the plate, and he showed it. He's a really, really, really exciting player. So that's a good choice. My radar, like I mentioned in my best of the week, the NHL being back, I'm going to segue into my player who is on the radar, and that is Mr. Auston Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Auston Matthews was the first overall selection of this past year's NHL draft, the 2016 NHL draft. He is an American-born player, which is awesome. Going to the Maple Leafs, which is, in quotes, Canada's team, one of the oldest teams, an original six team. So Auston Matthews going there. In his debut, he scores 4 goals, which has never been done before, not by Wayne Gretzky, not by Sidney Crosby. It has never been done before in the history of the National Hockey League. 4 goals in his debut. Mr. Auston Matthews, have yourself a day. You are officially on my radar. So that is our players that we're really, really interested in right now that are on our radar, and I like that segment, so I think that one may stick around. But let's move on. Let's go ahead and talk a little football. Ohio State football, that is. The Buckeyes beat Indiana last Saturday 38-17. It was a rough game for the Buckeyes. They struggled at times, but they did find a way to beat the Hoosiers. JT Barrett specifically struggled, especially passing the ball. He was only 9 for 21 with 93 yards. He had a touchdown and interception, but he did dominate on the ground. He had 26 carries for 137 yards and a touchdown. Curtis Samuel also looked good running the football. He had 9 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown. And Dontre Wilson, he had a pretty good game. He had 3 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. So they did struggle, but the Buckeyes remained number 2 in the AP polls after beating Indiana. They did not cover the spread, by the way. So I actually lost a little money on that game, but still love them. The Buckeyes have a huge game this week. Saturday, they will head to Camp Randall Stadium to take on number 8 Wisconsin, who's coming into the game 4-1. Madison's always a tough environment. They always play jump around. That's going to be loud. It's going to be I think that's where game day's from, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yeah, so it's going to be a ruckus environment. It's going to be a tough game for the Buckeyes. Ohio State does open up as a favorite. They open up as an 11-point favorite going into Camp Randall Stadium. By the way, shout out to the Big Ten. They have 4 teams in the top 10 for the first time since 1960. Number 2, Ohio State, 4, the team up north. Number 8, Wisconsin, and number 10, Nebraska. So shout out to the Big Ten haters out there. But Ian, what do you think about this game coming up against Wisconsin? It will be a tough one for sure for the Buckeyes.
First, fuck you, SEC. How you like that? 4 teams in the top 10.
Yeah, how do you like that, SEC? Yeah, that's right, Saban. How do you like that?
My best Kirk Cousins. You like that? It's going to be a tough one. Seems like Wisconsin's always prepared for the Buckeyes, and with it being prime time under the lights, Saturday night on ABC, this is where I hate to take it out from WCW back in the old wrestling days, but it's where the big boys play. Ohio State's going to have to go in and play a flawless game, and they can do that. I mean, they did that against Oklahoma earlier in the season. They went out to Norman and they played a flawless game and absolutely dominated the Sooners. I think they're capable of doing that. I think this is low key one of Urban Meyer's best Ohio State teams he's had. I know it doesn't have the superstars like Zeke, but and I know a lot of people didn't predict Ohio State to be doing as well as they are, but that defense is phenomenal. They're cool, calm, and collective on the field. They're poised. JT Barrett, probably one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Needs a big game to stay in that Heisman discussion, but I mean, you and I both know that he's probably top of our list, but I don't see the Buckeyes having any problem going into Wisconsin. Like I said, I think low-key one of Meyer's best teams he's had at Ohio State, and I think they're going to cover that Indiana game. Indiana's got a good team this year. You know, a lot of Buckeye fans were freaking out about that Indiana game. Indiana's got a good team. A lot of people don't realize they beat Michigan State the week before that. So they're going to go into Wisconsin. I think they're going to do fine. Barrett's going to have the offense settled down. It's always hyped there, like you said, with jump around. But when the clock hits 4 zeros, I think Ohio State's going to be on top, and I think they're going to be on top by a couple scores, and the Buckeyes are just going to continue rolling.
It's definitely going to be a tough game. This is by far the best defense that they've faced so far this season in Wisconsin. They have a fantastic defense, but what hurts Wisconsin is they don't have a quarterback. That's why they're not undefeated. If they did, they would have beat Michigan by far. Because that game was 14-7, I do believe. They held Michigan in check, and I mean, you look and see what Michigan's doing to teams this year. So it's going to be a tough game for the Buckeyes. Barrett can't have a game like he did against Indiana, that's for sure. Now, granted, Indiana is a sneaky good team. They run the football very well. The Buckeyes look bad against them. They just didn't execute at all, and it showed on the field. They just did not look good. But this is going to be a tough game. Wisconsin is always a tough opponent. They always seem like they have just dominant runners. They always have good running backs, always. So it's going to be a fun game, though. I really, really think Ohio State is one of the best teams in the country. I think they're one of the most complete teams. And, Ian, you alluded to it earlier when you said that not many people expected Ohio State to be where they are. And that's because they're the youngest team in Division I football. I mean, they lost 12 players to the NFL draft. I mean, 12 stars, not just players, stars. So it's early season. It's young. This is a very tough opponent. You said you mentioned Michigan State when you were talking about Indiana. By the way, Michigan State is playing like one of the worst teams in Division I football right now. But I do believe this is going to be a good game. I think Ohio State pulls it out. But I don't know, man. If they can get to the quarterback, if they can cause turnovers on defense, they'll win the game. Because their offense is good. They'll move the ball down the field. But they have to get turnovers on defense and give their offense good field position. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an awesome game. I can't wait. So let's move on. Let's talk about a little NFL, Ian. Let's talk about your Browns first. So Cleveland lost to the Patriots last Sunday, 33-13. It was Tom Brady's first game back since his suspension. Rough first game back, Ian, for your Brownies to have Brady on that day. Browns gave up 501 total yards to the Patriots, including 406 yards through the air. Brady put on an absolute clinic against them. Like you mentioned earlier, Ian, the Browns played 3 different quarterbacks in this game. Cody Kessler was knocked out of the game with what was being called a chest/rib injury. Charlie Whitehurst came into the game. He left with an injury. They briefly put in Terrell Pryor at quarterback, and then Charlie Whitehurst came back in. It was an absolute mess. Isaiah Crowell, who's had a great start to the season, he was shut down completely by the Patriots. He only had 22 yards on 13 carries. It was a rough day for the Crow. Note on Cody Kessler, head coach Hugh Jackson on Thursday did say that the rookie quarterback is, quote, ready to go and will start at Tennessee. So, Ian, I did get to watch this game because the Bengals were on at 4 o'clock. So I did get to watch the Browns. They're a mess. I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but a rough day, my friend. What do you think of the game?
First of all, Patriot fans and Tom Brady fans always want to talk about how Roger Goodell is out to just put Tom Brady on the shelf. He's against the Patriots, how he hates them all. Motherfucker brought Tom Brady back after 4 games. That fifth game on the schedule was the Cleveland Browns. He gave Tom Brady an absolute fucking cupcake to come back to. That sucked. The first drive, Brady just there was no rust. And the sick part about it is if you listen to the post game, I know I'm jumping ahead of myself, but the post game interview with Brady, he goes, "Yeah, I had a lot of rust." Like total Tom Brady move. There's a lot of rust to work out. There's some kinks in the armor. Didn't feel right on a lot of plays. Motherfucker, shut up. Just shut up. You're the best quarterback in the league. You went to Cleveland your first game, and you tore us a new one. You talked about it. Just Crowell couldn't get anything established on the ground. We tried getting Duke Johnson the ball. We just could not break through. Crowell's a normally north and south runner. Great job doing that. We were going a lot of east and west with a lot of our run plays. We did a lot of pitches. We weren't trying to run up the gut. And one thing that Belichick does is he makes sure he has a fast defense. And those linebackers were killing us, especially Hightower.
Another thing Belichick does very, very well, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but we always say it, Belichick, he's a genius because what you do well, he takes that away. And what do the Browns? What have the Browns done well this year? Well, their one shining little light in their offense has been Isaiah Crowell. He's ran the hell out of the ball. He's looked great. Took him away completely.
Completely. Going back to the Browns early in the first quarter, Cody Kessler looked good. Cody Kessler looked really good in the pocket. He was poised. He looked very calm against a good Patriots defense. And then, unfortunately, there was a breakdown in coverage. Some Dante Hightower got through the line and put him into the ground, drove him into the ground. As soon as I saw Kessler roll over, I knew it wasn't good. Then Clipboard Jesus comes in. And, all joking aside, I know Whitehurst has played on pretty much every NFL team. Whitehurst didn't play bad. He had a decent stat line, but it was just too much going up against Brady and that Patriots offense. Blount killed us. Brady went to Chris Hogan, who was one of his favorite targets in the preseason. Just finding people all over. Martellus Bennett killed us. Everybody was worried about Gronk and Brady's first game together. Martellus Bennett just killed us in the red zone. It was just an ugly day all around. I'm thankful that Kessler's injury wasn't serious, that he'll be coming back to play against Tennessee on Sunday. Kessler's looked pretty good. He's accurate. He lacks that big arm, but he's been playing well. So, that's just one you got to take on the chin and you got to move forward. I knew going into this, even though I took him in my picks last week and my bold prediction, that's the fan coming out at me. But you got to deal with what you got to deal with. And, seeing the Patriots game 4 of that schedule and it being – or game 5 on that schedule and Tom Brady being the person to come back to play against, that's just not a fun game. So the team just horrible all day. Couldn't get anything going. And the defense, we have zero secondary besides Joe Hayden, and Tom Brady picked us apart. He was a surgeon.
Yeah, he worked on Joe Hayden a little bit too, from what I saw. So it was a bad game. That's just such a tough game for the Browns to get Brady on his first game back. And like you said, Martellus Bennett just absolutely tore you guys up. Everybody worried about Gronk, and he's going to be completely healthy against the Bengals, which thank God for that. So it's just going to be an absolute – God, I don't know. It's going to be a long season for Brown fans. If you guys have to keep replacing quarterbacks each week and nobody can get any kind of continuity at all, it's just going to be over for you guys.
They went ahead and they released Charlie Whitehurst on Monday. So
nice.
Clipboard Jesus is gone. They did promote quarterback Kevin Hogan from the practice squad. Hogan was that he's a Stanford product, had a great career at Stanford. Him and Kessler had a couple great battles in the Pac-12. So Kevin Hogan's now on the roster. Believe third string behind McCown. McCown's going to back up Kessler this week. But yeah, they parted ways with Clipboard Jesus on Monday.
And now Clipboard Jesus is on his way to his next journey. And who knows where that may be. But speaking of the Browns, their next game at Tennessee, you look at that game, Tennessee's a weird team. We were talking about it before the show. I don't know if they're good. The AFC South is such a terrible division. I have no idea if they're good, if they're a pretender. I don't know. It could be a game on the schedule where the Browns may be able to squeak by with a win. Who knows? But let's move on. I don't want to make you relive that any more than you already have. Let's talk about my Cincinnati Bengals, which wasn't any better. My Cincinnati Bengals got absolutely destroyed by the Dallas Cowboys. They lost 28-14 and looked like absolute shit on both sides of the ball. It wasn't on Andy Dalton, though, for all the Andy Dalton haters. They still chirped me after the game, believe it or not, Ian. But Andy Dalton went 29 of 41 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he finished with a 104.6 quarterback rating. That's kind of weird because he was running for his life on every play. But pretty good game by Andy. Brandon LaFell had a good game. 8 receptions for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. Here's the problem with the Bengals. This is they couldn't get any running going. They could not get a run game. Jeremy Hill was pretty much non-existent. Gio Bernard had 9 carries for 50 yards. And Ian, do you want to take a guess who was the second leading rusher in the game for the Bengals?
I'll say Andy Dalton.
That's correct. Our quarterback was the second leading rusher in the game with 6 carries for 34 yards. That's terrible for those of you who don't know anything about football. Pretty terrible. Bengals just look like shit all over. On offense, their offensive line could not block. Andy Dalton was running for his life on every single play, and he was frustrated. You could see he was yelling, he was throwing the football at the ground. He was pissed. He had no time to throw the ball. I was pissed watching that offensive line. This is one of the lines that was one of the better lines last year that was advertised coming into the season as supposedly one of the best lines in football. And this season they've looked like shit. They've looked terrible. Andy Dalton has been sacked through 5 games more than he was at all last season. It's terrible. Terrible job by the offensive line. Defense, they didn't look much better. Zeke Elliott ran all over them. Ezekiel Elliott was all over the field. Literally ran all over us, ran the ball down our throat, finished the game with 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Dak Prescott looked great against the Bengals. He had all day to throw the ball. They couldn't get any pressure on him. The only defensive players that have showed up, Vontaze Burfict finished the game with 10 tackles. He was all over the field. Carlos Dunlap is the only person on our defensive line that has done anything this year. Geno Atkins, who I love, has not shown up in any stat sheets. That's a problem. Dunlap had 4 tackles and he had a sack, and he also had a strip sack, or the sack was a strip sack. So other than those 2, the defense was terrible. Secondary got lit up. Just terrible all around. Awful loss. That was one I thought for sure the Bengals could get, especially now they have to go to Foxborough for Brady's first game back at home, which will be an absolute treat, I'm sure. But yeah, just a terrible performance. And Pro Football Talk announced on Thursday that Tyler Eifert is likely to miss his 6th straight game of the season. So we're without our best scorer in the red zone from last season. So it should be great. The Patriots open up as an 8-point favorite against the Bengals, which is not good. Pretty terrible. Ian, did you watch the Bengals game at all?
I did. I watched probably about 75% of it. Zeke really reminded me of his old Ohio State days. He ran all over the Bengals. Just Jared, you talked about that defense couldn't get anything going. That defense couldn't get pressure on Dak Prescott. He's a rookie quarterback, and Dak and Zeke are playing behind the best offensive line in the NFL. There's no denying that the Cowboys have the best offensive line in the game. there's that. But for rookies, two rookie skill players to be playing that well, and just have that kind of confidence, that's scary. Another thing, a lot of Bengals fans talk about Andy Dalton being robotic and his interviews and his responses, and he seems like a robot with no emotion on the field. I saw a fired up Andy Dalton, and that's not a pun about his red hair. He was fired up because his line could not block for him. He was running for his life all game, exactly like you talked about, and they just couldn't get anything going. And again, I'm going to go back and slam Roger Goodell. I don't think Roger Goodell hates the Patriots like everybody thinks. I think Roger Goodell hates Ohio. He gave Tom Brady his first game back at Cleveland and his first home game against the Bengals. So it doesn't get much better for the Bengals moving into next week. The Eifert thing, that's just terrible. You know me, I'm a big Eifert fan. I text you when they drafted him. I was pissed. A damn good player falling that low to him. And, he was there. I couldn't believe it. I hate seeing Eifert miss this many games, but it's smart not pushing him too quick. This kid's going to come back, and once he comes back, that whole offense is going to change. But the defense, they need to they're rough around the edges right now. They need to get back in the groove because the Bengals, for the last few seasons, have had one of the best defenses in the league, and they're not playing like they are. Just like that offensive line, they need to get it going. They need to start figuring out, because right now you're getting to the part of the season where, okay, teams have figured out their rhythm, teams have figured out their game plan, and right now it's the wrong time to be on the losing side of a 500 record.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you go into Foxborough where Brady's going to be pumped. All those Patriots fans are going to be loud. Belichick's going to take away A.J. Green. That's what he does. He takes away the best thing on your offense, so he's going to take away A.J. Green. So who's going to step up? Is it going to be LaFell? Tyler Boyd drop passes? That's another thing. All you Andy Dalton haters out there, do you see how many passes his wide receivers drop? He's hitting guys in the hands and they're dropping them passes. His offensive line is terrible. I'm so fucking sick of the A.J. McCarron argument. Quit saying that the Bengals should bring in A.J. McCarron. Do you know why they're not going to bring in A.J. McCarron? Because even if they did, he would have looked like shit behind that offensive line. Andy Dalton still almost had 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. He looked great running for his life. I saw one play, he was rolling out to the right, throwing across his body, running toward the sideline, and he underthrew a receiver. I saw someone say, and he may have the worst arm strength in the NFL. Are you fucking serious? Because the only quarterback in the league that makes that accurate throw is Aaron Rodgers, because his arm strength's unbelievable. That's such an absurd thing. Everyone is just looking for reasons to pile on Andy Dalton. It does not make sense. The guy is only won. He's won. He wins in Cincinnati. That's all he's done since he got there. Sure, he hasn't won a playoff game. I don't think all that's pinned on Andy Dalton, though. So let's pump the brakes on that, okay? He's our quarterback. Back him or shut the fuck up, okay? I'm sick of this A.J. McCarron argument. I'm glad we have him. He's a great backup. But Andy Dalton is our starter. Back your quarterback, people. I'm so sick of this. Anyways, that game sucked. Hate to relive it. It's going to be even tougher on Sunday. I do believe the Bengals can win, though. I really do. If they can get pressure on Brady, if they can protect Andy, I think they can win. That's my delusional Bengals brain at work, but I do believe they can win. So who knows? I don't really think it's a good thing to fall to 2-4 to start the season, but everyone's jumping off the bandwagon early. It's early. They have tons of season left, so stick by the team. Their schedule gets much easier. They still got 2 games against Cleveland, no offense, and they still got 2 games against Baltimore. So we got the Redskins in London. There's tons of games where we can win and get back into this. So, guys, pump the brakes. But let's move on, Ian. Let's talk a little baseball. Playoff baseball's around. It's been awesome. Every game of the playoffs has just been so good. Series have been good. The Indians, like you said, the Cleveland Windians earlier, representing Ohio. They swept the Boston Red Sox and knocked out Big Papi in the ALDS. They dominated. The Red Sox led in the first inning of that first game of that series and did not lead for the rest of the series. The Indians were so dominant against them. They'll move on and they will face the Toronto Blue Jays in the ALCS, which the Indians have home field advantage for that series, which is awesome. The Blue Jays have gotten hot at the right time. They're a team that's really hitting really well right now. But this Indians team, Ian, they are so well-rounded. They got such a good team. They're great defensively. They put runs on the board. So they've been great. And like you mentioned earlier, Terry Francona is managing like no one else right now. I mean, he is bringing in Andrew Miller in the fourth inning. He's going with his guys and saying to teams, beat us. If you can beat us, we're bringing in our best guy. I don't care how much rest he's had. You got to beat our best guy. It's going to be a fantastic series. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Ian?
Exactly. To touch on Francona again, there's not much more you can say about how well he's managing this team. The Indians are well-rounded. They do all aspects of the game great. Defensively, one of the best teams in the majors. Their offense, top-notch. Their pitching, they don't have 5 Cy Young winners in their rotation. They don't have, lights out, guys that just throw 105 miles an hour in the bullpen. They have good, solid pitching that does enough to get by. And you're going to see when they play the Blue Jays, these crafty pitchers tear up that Blue Jays lineup that no one's been able to figure out. You talked about the Blue Jays. They're hot at the right time. And the Blue Jays are a fun team to watch offensively. But I don't think that Cleveland offense is going to have any problem against that Blue Jays pitching staff. They had success in the regular season. Guys like J.A. Happ, I don't think he's going to keep this going. Really outside of Marcus Stroman, who's a Duke guy, might I add, I don't think the Indians will have any problems at all. We talked about it last week. They're built for October. They're built to contend. They've got depth. He can go into that bullpen in the fourth inning, and he can bring out guys, and, they can preserve leads the whole game. The offense, they play small ball. They get them on, they get them over, they get them in. Guys like Kipnis, the catcher, I'm Roberto Perez. He has been playing phenomenal. He had a huge game one. Carlos Santana playing well. Tyler Naquin playing well. Lindor. This team is a good ball club. This is not the Cleveland Indians of old. This is the Cleveland Indians of new. This team has built the system. They've got a premier manager in the game. Terry Francona has been to the World Series. He's won it with the Red Sox. He's going to get this Indians team there. And if this Indians team gets to the World Series, all bets are off. Cleveland looks like they could do it. I'm very confident in the Indians' abilities to knock out the Blue Jays, but I think it's going to be a good series.
Man, if they get to the World Series, how crazy is it that Cleveland has a potential chance to win 2 major sports championships in a calendar year? I mean, that is insanity, people. The city of Cleveland has been a laughingstock for years, and to win 2 major sports championships, the potential of that, my gosh, that city will just explode into a black hole if the Indians win a World Series, Ian.
Can I tell you a freaky fact real quick?
I think I know where you're going with this. Is this the 216?
It sure is.
Let's hear it.
8 games stand between the Indians and a World Series crown. That's 27 outs each game. 8 times 27, 216. Area code of Cleveland.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I'll give you that. It's pretty wild. But, yeah, man, the Indians, they just got a great manager. And how awesome would a Cubs-Indians World Series be? One of them has to win. Oh, my gosh, man. That's like kind of made for TV baseball. It would be awesome. I think the Cubs are going to for sure come from the NL. I think the Nats could give them a series. But you look, Scherzer's pitching on Thursday night or tonight when we're recording this. He's pitching, and he's not going to be able to pitch game 1 against the Cubs. So if they did advance, which they're up 1-0 in the bottom of the 4th right now. So I don't know, man. I really like this Indians team. I think they're very, very well rounded. They got great players. They don't have. Let me rephrase that. They don't have great players. They have a lot of good players. That's no offense to any Indians fan player out there. Jason Kipnis is a monster. They got a ton of just good players that just become this great team, and they're really, really built for October, man. So they got a great bullpen too, and that's one thing that really helps in October. So it's gonna be fun. I can't wait for that series to start against the Blue Jays. But go Tribe! So let's move on. Let's go to our OSR mailbag segment. This is where we answer questions from you, the fans. So we do have a couple questions, and I'd like to get to those now. So Jake Parrish wants to know, Ian, this is for both of us. Who has been our biggest disappointment for you? Who has it been from the Browns? And for me, who has it been from the Bengals so far to start this season?
For the Browns, pretty disappointed. That's a tough one. I guess I would throw Joe Hayden up there. With the injuries last year that Hayden had, he was limited to very little time. I attribute that to, he didn't play much in the preseason last year, and I just don't think he got into tip-top shape. And he was out for most of the last season. He came into this season, and, a few years back when he came into this league, I thought he was probably a top 5, top 10 cornerback in this league. Right now he's getting lost in the shuffle. Quarterbacks are making him look bad. Brady made him look god-awful. But there's other guys that are making him look bad. They're not afraid to go at him anymore. And, quarterbacks that aren't household names are going at him. And he's just not making the plays. So Joe Hayden would be number one on my list of most disappointing Browns.
So I'll play a little devil's advocate here for Joe Hayden. He doesn't have any help over top. He has no other help. So,
Not at all.
To be a good corner, you need that help. Richard Sherman has help over top. He has Cam Chancellor. You look at all the great corners. Josh Norman had help over top in Carolina. You look at all the great corners of the game, or in today's game. They have help over top. They're not afraid to let a guy slip by them because they know their safety's got their back. That's one problem that the Bengals have had terribly this year. They missed Reggie Nelson terribly. But he doesn't have any help on that defense. So I think maybe when you can surround him with a better cast of characters, he may look better, but he has not looked good this year. And Tom Brady has picked on a lot of guys. He's made a lot of guys look bad. So that's kind of a bad example, but I do agree he has struggled this year. My biggest disappointment, Jake, for the Bengals has to be the offensive line. They've looked absolutely terrible. Dalton has no time to throw the ball. They can't open up any holes for a rushing game. We're one of the worst rushing teams in the league. They look bad all around. They look terrible. They have made me so mad. It's unbelievable because I am a in the trenches guy. I watch that stuff through and through, and the offensive line has been bad. So that is my choice for my biggest disappointment. So thank you for the question, Jake. Dean Lanier wants to know, what do you guys think the Reds will do this offseason with either Phillips or Cozart? Do we think either one of them will be gone, or do we think both of them will be gone? Ian?
We know the story with Phillips. He's going to have to accept a trade to leave town. With that 10-5 deal he's got, 10 years in the bigs, 5 with the current team, it's pretty much full trade clause. So he's turned down a trade to the Nationals, and that was to go to a team that was managed by Dusty Baker, who he had a good relationship with. It's hard for me to believe that Brandon Phillips will go elsewhere. He's said many times that he's comfortable living in Cincinnati. He loves it here. The Reds, if they're gonna part ways with Brandon Phillips, they're gonna have to release him and eat that money. So Brandon Phillips isn't going to anywhere as far as a trade goes unless they release him. He's not going anywhere unless the team releases him. As far as Cozart goes, I know there were teams calling him, knocking down the door, trying to get him at the trade deadline. I don't know. I just don't see them moving on from Cozart right now. I think Cozart's the safe bet to play it short. They're going to have to find some spot in the lineup next year for Jose Peraza. because that kid's an absolute stud. But you look at teams like the Cubs, and I mean, I said it earlier, I hate the Cubs. But before his injury, the Cubs were finding spots for Kyle Schwarber to play. You know, some of these young guys, they play multiple positions. And you look at the Cubs with Kyle Schwarber and Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant splitting time at third base and in the outfield. Schwarber's catching, you know, maybe once every 7 or 8 days and then playing the outfield. Peraza can play the outfield. He's an excellent infielder, you know, middle infielder, second, shortstop. He can play third base. They got to find some spot. Now, if it comes down to, well, we got to get rid of Cozart to find a spot for Peraza on the team, then I think they have to get rid of Cozart because Peraza has to be on this team next year. He's going to waste away in the minors if they don't have him on the big league club next year.
Yep, I couldn't have said it better myself, man. I think Cozart will be the one to go. Phillips isn't going anywhere. He loves Cincinnati. He's making too much money here. I just don't see him leaving. So, thank you for the question, Dean. Now, we did get this last question. We got about 10 of these, so I'm just going to bundle them all. So from everyone who asked if in a roundabout, let me paraphrase, if the Bengals are at midpoint of the season and they have a losing record, like a bad record, will they fire Marvin Lewis? Are the Bengals going to fire Marvin Lewis? I cannot tell you how many of those we got. Quick answer, no, they're not going to fire Marvin Lewis. Mike Brown loves Marvin. He will not fire him. A lot of people were chirping me after the Cowboys game saying it's another classic Marvin letdown. It's time to let him go. I said last year after the playoff loss, I think Marvin has taken the Bengals as far as he can take them. I think it is time to move on. I'm completely fine with the Bengals moving on from Marvin Lewis. He won't be fired at all during this season. His contract's up after this year, so that's when you would see him. He's done too much for the Bengals for them to fire him in the middle of the season. They'll just take their hits on the chin, and they'll move on, and they'll part ways peacefully as it can be. So they're not going to fire him in the middle of the season, people. I'm completely fine. If the Bengals want to replace Marvin, who are they going to replace him with? That's the one thing I always say to people. If you think the Bengals should move on from Marvin Lewis, give me a replacement. Give me a person that they can bring in and they can take this team higher than what Marvin did. Because that's where people stall. They're like, oh, I don't know. But anybody. Well, that's not how it works. You have to have someone in mind. And here's the thing with Mike Brown that people need to realize. He doesn't hire big-name coaches. He will not pay money for them. They're pretty much going to have to take a pay cut, or it's going to have to be someone like, hey, I want my chance. Like Hugh Jackson did with Cleveland. Hugh Jackson wanted a chance to prove that he is a head coach. He can be a head coach in the National Football League. He went to Oakland. He was 8-8. They got rid of him. He wanted another chance. Mike Zimmer wanted a chance. He went to the Vikings. The Vikings weren't nobody. These coaches, that's what Mike Brown's going to look for. He's going to look for someone who will take less money to come coach with a good group of guys, but he's not going to pay for a big-name coach. And what he typically does is he likes to hire from within. So let's look at our coordinators. Paul Gunther, he's got head coaching potential, but look at this defense. They've underachieved all year. So is he going to take a guy who's underachieved with a defense that shouldn't underachieve? Unlikely. You look at Ken Zampese. He's been terrible. This has been one of the worst offensive seasons that the Bengals have had in a long time. He's not going to get the job. So you can go down the list. Who is Mike Brown going to bring in? So if you think Marvin should be gone, please give me a potential candidate that you think would fit this team, because I've not heard a good one from anyone who's suggested this. So that's my long answer to that, and I appreciate everyone sending in questions this week. I really do. Ian, did you have anything else to add to that?
I'll get to my bold prediction for this week.
Gotcha. So thank you to everyone who sent in questions this week. We really do appreciate it. You guys are awesome, and you guys help this show go. So let's move on. Let's get into our NFL picks of the week. Ian, do you want to recap last week's terrible week?
Last week was brutal, brother. Alex and I both went 7-7. You were at 6-8. For the season, you're currently in first place by a game over Alex. You're 43-34. Alex is 42-35. I'm just a shade under 500 at 34-43, so it's pretty rough right now.
Yeah, that was a really, really rough week, and got to be better. I'm pretty upset with myself. But anyways, let's move on to our NFL picks of the week. Hit the music. All right, first game on the card, Thursday Night Football. It's currently playing. As of right now, the San Diego Chargers are up on the Denver Broncos 10-3. We all picked the Broncos, so let's move on from that game. Sunday, the San Francisco 49ers and Chip Kelly head to Buffalo to take on Sexy Rexy and Slob Rob. Ian, who do you have in this one?
I'm going with Sexy Rexy and Slob Rob.
I agree with you. I'm taking the Bills in this one. I think it'll be ugly, but I'm taking them. Next game on the card, we have Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles on the road taking on the Washington Redskins. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Last week, we saw that Carson Wentz was human. They got beat. Washington, after an 0-2 start, they're in search of their fourth straight victory. I'm going with the Redskins.
I disagree with you. I'm taking the Eagles on the road in this one. Tough divisional matchup. Next game, Ian, we have your Cleveland Browns on the road taking on Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. Who do you have in this one?
Tennessee relies on the run. DeMarco Murray, I have in fantasy. He scored me quite a few points this week or this season. I'm confident with that Browns defense that they can stop the run. Mariota hasn't shown much with the passing. I'm going with my Browns. I'm sticking with Cleveland to get their first win this week.
I think this is a game. If Cleveland were going to win one this year, it is this week, but I don't think it'll happen. I'm taking the Tennessee Titans. I think DeMarco Murray goes absolutely ape shit on you guys, so I'm taking the Tennessee Titans in this one. Next game on the card, we have the Baltimore Ravens on the road taking on the New York Football Giants. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Giants should be getting running back Rashad Jennings back this week. So if that happens, I'm going with the Giants. I'm going with the G-Men this week at home.
Yeah, I think Odell goes absolutely nuts this week. He had a pretty good game last week, so I'm taking the G-Men to win this one. Next game on the card, we have the Carolina Panthers, who are 1-4, struggling, but they do get Superman back this week on the road in the Dome, taking on the New Orleans Saints. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Neither team has a defense. This is going to be an absolute shootout. Carolina has zero pass coverage. Life after Josh Norman has been rough. I think Drew Brees is going to win this one. I think the Panthers fall to 1-5.
I agree with you. Drew Brees, death, taxes, and Drew Brees at home. Drew Brees is going to dominate that Panthers secondary. I'm taking the Saints in this one. Next game on the card, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road taking on the Chicago Bears. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Tough one, Jared. You know, I like the Jaguars. I like to jag off in my free time. And Blake Bortles, he's tough. But Hoyer the Destroyer, he is killing it with Chicago right now. Chicago at home over the Jaguars.
Yeah, this is an ugly game, but I like the Jags. I'm going to take the Bears at home. That's an ugly game. I don't know who wins it, but I'm going to take the Bears. Next game on the card, we have Jeff Fisher's 3-2 Rams. He's right there around 500. This is right where he wants to be. Jeff Fisher's 3-2 Los Angeles Rams on the road taking on Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions. Ian, who do you have in this one?
They say you're most comfortable at home. Detroit's going to win at home, and Jeff Fisher's going to be at home at 500. I'm taking the Lions.
Oh, yeah, Lions all day. Bet your house on this one. Jeff Fisher has to get to 500. The Rams will fall to 3-3. I'm taking the Lions in this one. Next game on the card, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road taking on the Miami Dolphins. Ian, who do you have in this one?
We talked about this before the show. You mentioned how Roethlisberger's a little shaky on the road, but Miami looks awful. If it wasn't for that win against Cleveland, they'd be right there among the worst in the NFL. I think they're sitting there in the worst in the NFL. I'm going with the Steelers. Yeah,
that Steelers offense is too good. Ben Roethlisberger's playing lights out. He doesn't play as well on the road, but I'm taking the Yinzers in this one. Next game on the card, we have my Cincinnati Bengals on the road taking on the New England Patriots. Tom Brady's first game back in Foxborough. Ian, who are you taking in this one?
Foxborough's a fortress. Brady's first game back. I got to go the Patriots.
Fuck the Pats. Going with the Bengals. Who day? Next game on the card, we have the Kansas City Chiefs on the road taking on the Oakland Raiders. Ian, who do you have in this one?
Derek Carr has been awesome. Proves to be a great fantasy quarterback, which I own in every one of my leagues. I'm going Raiders.
Yeah, the Chiefs aren't as good as advertised. They're missing a good running game. I'm taking the Raiders in the black hole. Craziest fans in football. Next game on the card, we have the impressive Atlanta Falcons sitting at 4-1 on the road, taking on the Seattle Seahawks. Always a tough place to play. Ian, who are you taking in this one?
Extremely tough place to play. You're right, Jared. But Atlanta are going to go in under the tutelage of Dan Quinn, the former Seattle Seahawks defensive corner, and Dan Quinn and the Falcons are going to steal a win away from the Seahawks.
I disagree with you. I'm taking the Seahawks at home. That's a fortress as well, so I'm taking the Seahawks. Next game on the card, we have the impressive Dallas Cowboys and rookie Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott on the road, taking on a good Dom Capers defense in Lambeau, the Green Bay Packers. Ian, who do you have in this one?
I think this is probably the greatest matchup we've got this week. I'm going with the Cowboys on the road in a close one.
It's going to be a good one. It really is. But I'm taking the Packers in this one. Aaron Rodgers is the best player in football. I'm taking the Packers. Next game on the card, Sunday Night Football. The Indianapolis Colts on the road taking on Rocket Ship and the Houston Texans. Ian, this is a terrible division, but someone's got to win it. Who are you taking in this one?
Rocket Man. I'm going with Houston this week.
The J.J. Wattless Texans. Andrew Luck holds onto the ball way too long. He has probably one of the worst lines in football, but he does have T.Y. Hilton. I'm taking the Colts in this one. Final game on the card, Monday Night Football. We have the New York Football Jets on the road taking on your Arizona Cardinals. And Carson Palmer's back in. Who are you taking in this one?
I'm going with my Cardinals out in the desert. Larry Fitzgerald's found the fountain of youth. He's still a stud. David Johnson, everybody on that team. That defense is no joke. I'm going with the Cardinals.
I'm taking the Cardinals as well. I hope he throws 20 touchdowns to Larry Fitzgerald because I could use another fantasy win. But I'm taking the Cardinals at home in this one. So that is our NFL picks of the week. Hopefully it is much better than it was last week. Week 6, come to us. Hopefully it's much better because it's got to be. Last week was terrible. So sorry if you bet our lines last week because we were pretty bad. But that's our picks of the week. Hopefully you guys can win some money off of our picks. Hopefully I can whoop Ian's ass this week. So, yeah, let's move on to our bold prediction, Ian. What is your bold prediction for this upcoming week? You teased it earlier. So what is it?
I did tease it earlier. I got 2 bold predictions for the week. My first one, dealing with the Bengals. 90% of Bengals fans will be calling for Marvin Lewis's job after Sunday's loss to the Pats. 9.9% will be on the ledge of the Brent Spence Bridge, and the other 0.1%, like you, Jared, will take it on the chin and move right along like you guys should. It's crazy. It's crazy. I completely agree with you. If you're going to call for this guy's job, with as much talent that's on this team, you better have a leader in mind. And like you mentioned, Mike Brown doesn't pay big coaches. He brings in coordinators. And if you promote within, God knows you can't go Zampese. Gunther has potential, but you got to have a coordinator you're going to bring in for Mike Brown to pay the type of money he pays a head coach. My other bold prediction, I'm actually doing a little coaching right now, a little indoor soccer, 6 to 8-year-olds. We just finished up our 3rd practice this evening, and on Saturday we'll play our first game. My bold prediction is that we're going to start 1-0 on our indoor soccer season. We are the White Tigers.
I love it. We got to get some Ohio Sports Radio logos on those shirts. You mentioned in your bold prediction that fans will be calling for Marvin Lewis's head. That's not a bold prediction, my friend. They do that every week. It doesn't matter if we're going to the playoffs. They call for his head every week, and Andy Dalton's for that matter. But my bold prediction of the week, even if the Cincinnati Bengals lose on Sunday to the Patriots, which they will not, they will go in and win. That's another bold prediction. I'm saying the Bengals go in and win, but if by miracle they go in and lose that game, they still make the playoffs. even at 2-4, they will still make the playoffs. And all those fans that sat there and complained will be eating crow. The Bengals still make the playoffs. They go into Foxborough and win. That's my bold prediction. So that's the end of the show. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions this week. We appreciate it. If you have not already, like us on Facebook, Ohio Sports Radio on Facebook. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, at Ohio Sports Radio on Twitter is our Twitter handle. And also, make sure, if you have not already, please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music. Make sure you rate it, give us a 5-star review, and write us a review out, too. We're going to start reading reviews. If you, on iTunes, leave us a review, we'll start reading them on the show. So thank you to everyone who's already done that. You guys are awesome. We opened up a store, too. We have tons of awesome stuff coming, so many great ideas in this huge brand of mine. But we did release a bunch of koozies. So if you have not already, make sure you buy yourself an Ohio Sports Radio koozie. They're freaking awesome. I use mine all weekend. God knows we need something to keep our drinks cold in the state of Ohio. Our teams make us drink quite a lot. So thank you to everyone who's already bought those, by the way. You guys are freaking awesome. So if you have not already, like I said, subscribe to the podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. And Ian, fucking hooday, brother.
We bark together.
We'll see you guys next week on the other side for episode number 22 of the Ohio Sports Radio podcast.